It started with a simple bridge, a small, personal project that connected your property to the rest of the neighborhood. A bridge you built to make your life a little easier. But then, one day, you come home to find that the HOA has completely blocked it off. No notice, no explanation, just a cold concrete barrier where your bridge once stood. It felt like a violation. You were being treated like a criminal in your own home. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that this wasn't just about a bridge. It was about control. And they weren't going to stop there. How far would you go to fight back? Would you let them take everything from you? Or would you stand your ground? Keep watching to see how this seemingly small dispute turned into the fight of a lifetime. Life in the neighborhood had always been peaceful for Sarah and her family. Nestled at the edge of the cul-de-sac, their home stood as a quiet testament to years of hard work and careful planning. Sarah, a single mother with 2 kids, had worked tirelessly to make this place a home. It wasn't extravagant, but it was hers. A place where her children could run through the backyard, where they could laugh and grow up together free from the worries of the world. She'd always loved the sense of community. The neighbors weren't just people she shared a street with. They were friends. She'd spent years building those relationships. From block parties to casual conversations on warm summer evenings, everything felt right. For Sarah, the neighborhood was more than just an address. It was a place where she and her kids could feel safe, rooted, and connected. But, as with any community, there were rules. Most of them seemed harmless. Small guidelines about lawn care, house colors, and keeping noise levels down after 10 p.m. All things Sarah was happy to comply with. But there was always a feeling in the air that, beneath the surface, something else simmered. Some things in the community seemed off. It wasn't until Sarah decided to build a small footbridge from her backyard over the creek that ran through their property that she first brushed up against the true power of the HOA. The idea had seemed so simple. It would make the walk from their backyard to the rest of the neighborhood a little easier, especially when it rained. It wasn't a large structure, just a few planks of wood and some handrails, nothing that would impact anyone else's property. But it was enough to catch the eye of the HOA president, Mr. Wilson, an overbearing man with a penchant for enforcing the rules to the letter. At first it was just a quiet murmur, a few offhand comments from neighbors about how Mr. Wilson doesn't like things that aren't in the rule book. Sarah brushed it off. It was just a small bridge, after all. How could anyone take issue with it? Little did she know, that bridge would become the beginning of an escalating series of confrontations. It didn't take long before Sarah received the first letter from the HOA, an official notice accusing her of violating community regulations. The letter was polite, formal, even cold. It explained that the bridge was unauthorized and needed to be removed immediately. No discussion, no opportunity to explain. It seemed like a minor issue at first. After all, the bridge wasn't hurting anyone, but Sarah couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. The way the letter was worded, like the HOA had already made up its mind, felt like more than just a disagreement about property. It was a sign that things were about to change. When she called Mr. Wilson to discuss the issue, he didn't offer any room for negotiation. His voice was stern, dismissive even. "Rules are rules, Sarah. We can't make exceptions. You've made an alteration to your property without approval. It's a violation." That was all. For the first time, Sarah felt a wave of anger and frustration rise within her. This wasn't about a bridge. It was about control. The HOA, this group of people she had trusted to maintain the neighborhood, were now acting as if they owned not just her property, but her very right to live freely. Still, Sarah thought it was just a misunderstanding. She decided to comply, hoping it would all blow over. She took down the bridge, but the incident didn't sit well with her. The sense of injustice gnawed at her. Why had she been singled out? Why couldn't she build something on her own property, something that would improve her quality of life without facing a fine or punishment? But what Sarah didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. The HOA had already set their sights on her, and soon every little thing she did would be scrutinized. There were whispers of new rules, new fees, and a growing sense of tension in the neighborhood. It was clear the HOA wasn't just interested in enforcing guidelines. They wanted to make an example of anyone who didn't toe the line. With each passing day, Sarah began to feel like an outsider in her own home. The unfriendly neighbors started looking at her differently. She could feel the eyes of Mr. Wilson and the HOA board members on her, like they were waiting for her to make the next misstep. It wasn't just the bridge anymore. It was the way she felt like she was being watched, judged, and controlled. Then, the next letter came. This time, it wasn't about the bridge. It was about something else. Something small, but it felt personal. And that's when Sarah knew this wasn't just about rules. It was a fight. A fight for her home, her freedom, and her right to live on her property without fear of retaliation from an overzealous neighborhood council. She was ready to stand up. But would it be enough? As Sarah sat at her kitchen table, sorting through the pile of letters, one envelope caught her eye. It was from the HOA again. Her heart sank. It had only been a few weeks since they had forced her to take down the bridge she had built across the creek in her backyard, but already the oppressive weight of their rules had returned, like an unwelcome storm. She tore open the envelope, scanning the text with growing disbelief. This time, the letter was about her front yard. The grass was too tall in a couple of spots, and they demanded that she trim it or face a fine. She blinked, trying to make sense of it. Her yard was well kept, like it always was, but now they were coming after her for the tiniest infraction. It felt ridiculous. How could a neighborhood organization, whose sole purpose was to keep things orderly, make her feel like she was constantly under their thumb? The frustration that had been building for weeks now felt like a tidal wave. She had barely been able to recover from the incident with the bridge, and now this. But as she stewed over it, she realized the truth. This wasn't about lawn care. It was never about the bridge or the grass. This was personal. For weeks now, it had been a game of cat and mouse with the HOA. Every time she thought she was in the clear, they found something else to nitpick. It wasn't just Mr. Wilson anymore, the HOA president who had started this whole mess. There were others involved now, a group of board members which seemed to have made it their mission to target her. She had learned through whispered conversations with neighbors that the HOA had been emboldened by Sarah's compliance. The more she gave in, the more they pushed. She had been too kind, too eager to please. They had smelled weakness. And now, it felt like they were escalating. At first, she thought about ignoring the letter. She thought, I'll trim the grass, pay the fine, and move on. But then the thought of being pushed around, being made to feel like she was somehow unworthy of her own property, gnawed at her. Sarah had always worked hard for what she had. She'd earned that house, those memories, and that bridge. Her kids, Jenna and Kyle, had been having a great time playing in the backyard, making use of the space Sarah had worked so hard to create. But now they were starting to feel the strain too. Kyle, only 8, was constantly asking why they couldn't play in the backyard anymore. Jenna, a teenager, had started spending more time inside, keeping her distance from the neighbors, and she couldn't blame her.
Every time they went outside, it felt like someone was watching, waiting for them to slip up. Her phone buzzed with a new notification, pulling her from her thoughts. It was from Jenna again. "Mom, the HOA is out front again. They're taking pictures of our house." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Not again. She rushed outside to find two people standing at the edge of her property. They were clearly taking pictures of her house, her lawn, and, she noticed with rising anger, her front porch. One of them, a woman with a clipboard, looked up and saw Sarah approaching. Without missing a beat, she said, "Just making sure everything is up to code. We're doing an inspection. It's routine." Sarah could feel the heat rising in her chest. Routine? There was nothing routine about this. She didn't even recognize the woman, but Sarah had learned enough to